Well, here we are a day later. As I said, I was going to talk about this today. And we've seen that after all hell breaking loose in the ACC, now everybody is sort of backing down, uh, r- either realizing, recognizing, saying out loud the part that's been true the entire time, which is that these schools can't do anything. You're at where you're at. Here's the option for the ACC, okay, as we move forward. It's renegotiate with Disney, which is not going to get you anywhere. I mean, they're not going to. Why would they renegotiate with you? They have 13 years left on a deal that's good for them and that they bent over backwards to help you with twice. Secondly, you've got no real place for any of these teams to land. Now, one thing we talk about over on Dawg Post and what we're hearing, we give you nuance and detail. You're not going to get this stuff anywhere else, not even online anywhere. I mean, this is a particular subject that we pay very close attention to. A lot of people talking about this simply don't. They're not saying it the right way, or they don't know what they're talking about. That I mean, it's possible it's both, right? Um, right now, if the ACC were to somehow fall apart, which it's not going to, but let's just say it does, it would be Clemson and Florida State probably on the outside looking in, watching North Carolina and Virginia waltz right into the SEC. And I want to explain why right now, because I think that a lot of y'all watching this only think with your, football brain. You should be thinking with your business brain, because those are not necessarily the same thing. Florida State, obviously, is in Florida. It's not as obvious that Clemson is in South Carolina, but I can assure you that it is. Um, those two states already have schools with the SEC in them. Why does that matter? Well, the SEC network costs about $1 and a little bit for so-called in-market cable subscriptions. People who subscribe in South Carolina and Georgia. If you have cable and you're paying for the SEC network, well, if you have cable, you are paying for the SEC network, whether you realize it or not, if you're in Georgia, because that's considered in market. So every single cable subscriber in Georgia is paying about $1 and a little bit for the SEC network. They are in market. North Carolina is not in market for the SEC. Virginia is not in market for the SEC. So Florida State and South Carolina, Florida State and Clemson being in Florida and South Carolina, you're not adding any revenue if you're the SEC. And distributions from the Southeastern Conference are somewhere around $80 million. Dollars. It's going to go higher over time, but so each of those schools will be getting about $80 million with no guarantee that Disney would negotiate with the SEC again just for bringing in Florida State and Clemson. I mean, they're not going to do that. But anyway, um, everybody thinks that people are in business to be in business until it's their business. And like, then they don't want to, no, it's business. Like, why would Disney, who has an obligation to its stockholders, go backwards on a business deal? They're not going to do that. News Corporation wouldn't do that. They're just not going to do that. So the opportunity is in North Carolina, a state slightly smaller than Georgia, about 10 million people, and Virginia, a state smaller than Georgia, but not by a lot, about 8.6 million people. You have the capability of getting cable audiences there and moving about $1 a subscriber in both of those places. So, well, let's just do it this way. What happens if you get all of the subscribers in Virginia? Let's just say there are about 2 million subscribers in Virginia. And let's just say there are 3 million in North Carolina. So that's 5 million viewers, excuse me, payers. So that's $5 million every single month that you're getting for the SEC. So 5 times 12 equals 12 times 5 is 60. So that's $60 million a year that the SEC is bringing in above and beyond what it already did. Now you divide that by at that point, 18 schools, and you're talking about $3 million more a year. People say, well, That's not that much more. What? $3 million? That gets you a couple of defensive coordinators or a new baseball coach or a new basketball coach. Every single year, you're adding that up. The ACC is not getting that. So over the next 10 years, that would mean that Georgia would pull in about $40 million more just because Virginia and North Carolina would come into the league. And people say, oh, da, da, da. They would pull in 40 million. They would not pull that money in if Clemson and South Carolina came in. And that's just Georgia. That's not everybody else. Let's forget the fact that there makes no competitive sense for Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, Florida, South Carolina, and probably Tennessee and Vanderbilt to vote for those schools to come in. Why would they vote for them to come in? If you pick up Double Dogs today, you get our magazine for free. That's a season preview. I know I've not really shown it a lot because it's hard to show. It's not like a book. Can't get this anywhere else. The other specialty previews, I've seen them for Georgia. Look, it's not the same. I'll put it to you like that. But anyway, Double Dogs, you get this today. You get you get the preview for free. Now the preview is available without the book. You can get that down below or Red Zone. That's it. Red Zone, obviously in Athens. They'd be glad to see you there. You can pick up all your gear for the summer while you're there. You get some new shirts. Got some awesome looking champion stuff that they just got in. So I think there's a general misunderstanding of the economics of all of this. The ACC schools are where they're at. That's not going to change. And I think when you when you consider the landscape of things, North Carolina and Virginia would be ideal candidates for not just the SEC but for the Big Ten as well. And there are some differences between the Big Ten and the SEC's cable channels that I'm not going to get into right now, but they would both be impacted by this. So those schools um, that are threatening in the ACC are threatening with no leverage. They don't have leverage. What's the difference between the SEC and the ACC in terms of leaving and going? First of all, anyone that agrees to come into the ACC, which we've not seen since 2013, those schools have to abide by this grant of rights deal. Oh, by the way, let's just say Clemson and Florida State and Virginia and North Carolina leave. Where are they going to go? They have no value in the SEC because the ACC continues to hold their grant of rights until 2036. So, although they would be a member of the SEC in theory, they wouldn't be able to broadcast their home football games. So, Clemson, South Carolina, and Clemson would not be broadcast on television, which is the precise point of bringing people into a league. So, there's a lot of misunderstanding here. And before everybody kind of goes off this whole thing, people don't, if you're not saying exactly what I'm saying, you're wrong. I mean, I know that we are flirting with what is truth and what is not these days, which is insane, but this is reality. And if it were different than this, those schools would have already left. There'd be a place for them. You know, the brand that is North Carolina, I can assure you, is much stronger than UCLA. It is stronger than Maryland. It is stronger than Nebraska. It is an extremely strong brand. Virginia, I don't know, but North Carolina in the ACC is the strongest brand name. It is, period. Um, and they would have tremendous value, but they don't have value if you can't show games. The notion, and then people will say, well, what if the ACC blows up? Why would Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Louisville, Boston College, and even Notre Dame, why would they blow this league up? For what? Where is Louisville going? That they would vote against the ACC existing. Where is Wake Forest and Duke and Georgia Tech and Syracuse and Pitt and Boston College? Where are they going? They're not going anywhere. They have no future elsewhere. This is their best option. This is a lot of these teams' best option. And the people that I talk to, there's no certainty that the SEC would take the two football schools here, Florida State and Clemson. In fact, it was sort of, it doesn't really make sense. Now think about that. So the ACC is not getting blown up. We saw after one day of chirping amongst one another, Florida State basically backed down when they got the notion that they could get $5 to $10 million more a year by playing well. And that's spread across all sports. That's not just football. And it's not like Florida State's been burning it up in football lately either.